Welcome to Overbiked Randonneuring, a YouTube channel that focuses on the skills, strategies, and equipment best suited for success at ultra-distance cycling. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Goosyn Ti-Fi R50 road wheels. The centerpiece of these wheels are these polymer spokes that have been designed to work with more or less a standard hub. These spokes weigh less than half of what a traditional steel spoke weighs, are said to be a bit more comfortable, and they also have better impact resistance in some types of impacts according to the marketing materials. Because insulation from vibration plays a key role in the amount of fatigue that we feel over the course of a very long ride, I was super excited to get hold of these wheels to be able to test them and ride them and see how they perform. So today we're going to do just that. I've taken these wheels and I've put them through my rigorous vibration test to see how comfortable they are compared to a very similar traditionally built wheel. And I've taken them on a 400-kilometer brevet to see how they perform out on the road. That ride had nearly 5,000 meters of climbing and descending, so they got a pretty good test. I'd say that's a pretty nice look for an initial review, but for today I've taken them out to this beautiful bamboo forest because I thought they might feel a little bit homesick. You see, these wheels were sent out from Joe at Pandapodium at no charge. You can see that from my transparency icons that I include in every video review. You may also notice the back wheel is not a Goosyn Ti-Fi R50. That's because I broke it on the 400K. More on that in the video. Let's dive in. All right, we got 565 grams for the front. And 671 for the rear. That should make in total 1,236 grams for the set, and this is including rim tape and 2 valves. As I mentioned outside, the big innovation that Goosyn have here is the ability to use polymer spokes with a pretty standard hub. Even though this is branded as a Goosyn hub, it very much appears to be an H-Works SR270, which is a really lightweight hub. It's also a hub that allows for drilling to be accommodating to carbon spokes, which is the same drilling diameter that Goosyn have planned these polymer spokes around. And their secret sauce is in this titanium end cap. They use a mortise and tenon interlocking structure that gives a robust connection to the polymer spoke and allows it to stay firmly attached to the hub using a standard design. On the drive side here, the end cap keeps the freewheel body connected to the hub itself. I've already added some grease in here from when I had a cassette on it. And inside, we can see the DT Swiss style star ratchet system. Using very standardized parts like this, hopefully allow this wheel set to have good longevity and good service opportunities in the future. With slightly over 25 millimeters internal width and close to 34 millimeter external width, these wheels should pair aerodynamically with a 28C or 30C nominal tire, because with those sizes, the inner width of this wheel will balloon out the actual tire width and hopefully make it roughly the same width as the wheel, or perhaps even a little bit more narrow, to abide by that rule of 105. And we can see here it's been taped. The tape job is pretty good. Out here today to test the Goosyn R50 road wheels comfort properties, and to start we need a baseline, and these are very similar wheels here. These are the Far Sports gravel wheels. They also have 25 millimeter internal width. They're also 50 millimeters deep. The difference is they're hookless, and these have about 20,000 kilometers on them, so they're a fair bit used and have some dings to show for it. For both tests, the tires are the Schwalbe Pro 1 TLEs, set up tubeless. Going to test at 3 pressures, 50, 60, and 70 psi. To test the vibration dampening qualities, I've installed a rigid stem, so there's no suspension for this test. And we're going to be running here the Physics Toolbox app. And the linear accelerometer data will be recorded for 3 laps for each condition for each wheel set. And then the data is analyzed according to the characteristics of the course here. The course is Scooting around campus, 3 laps per setting, and there's about 15% of the course is really rough. There are several hard hits, about a dozen speed bumps and some curb transitions, and the rest is a mixture of sort of bike path that's a little bit rough and smooth road. In the past, I've calculated the amount that each of these sections make up the course, and that determines how I qualify and quantify the findings from Physics Toolbox app. So, time to go ride around campus like 9 times and swap wheels. One note, the tires are 30C size, and they balloon up to 32.5 millimeters on both sets of wheels. Oh, and one last thing, the tire pressure is going to be set using the Cyc Plus mini pump here. Going to start at 50, go to 60, and then 70. Let's do it. All right, we got our 9 test runs in. Lap data was consistent, and I will go inspect the vibration data as well. The hands sting a little bit from the 70 psi test, but that's all right. Time to swap the wheels. The 50 psi test is done, and it's feeling pretty good so far. I gotta say, these tan walls with the gold accents and the gold strings looking pretty slick. Let's see if the Goosyn here can string together some nice test runs for the 60 psi test. The windy conditions that I'm testing in today, that these handle really well with crosswinds. Like when I'm going behind a building and it creates a big low pressure zone, I get blown around still, but I don't feel that uneasiness as I felt with the Far Sports wheels. I think it may come down to that the tires here are a little bit more narrow than the rim. The rim's about 34 and the tires are about 32.5. So that maybe has a hand in the crosswind stability, but I don't know. Maybe some of you engineering types can let me know about that. Done with all the testing, been blown around a lot and feeling pretty cold. It's hard to say with any kind of certainty about if there were some significant performance or comfort gains from these Goosyn wheels, but that's why we have data. I definitely had different levels of fatigue for the first series of tests versus the second series of tests, and I think the data is going to be useful to parse that out. I will say on the 70 psi series of tests, it did feel like there was something to these wheels, so I'm going to look forward to see if there's some interesting findings when I analyze the vibration data results. Time to get inside and warm up. The test results are in, and the Goosyn wheels performed almost exactly the same as the steel-spoked wheels, except in one condition. When the pressure was 70 psi and when the road conditions were especially rough, it was kind of a busted path, kind of gravelly section, these Goosyn wheels did outperform the CX-Ray wheels by about 2%. That's a similar improvement as moving from an aluminum seat post to a carbon seat post. So I think that testing shows that the tires were getting overwhelmed on rough terrain and with high pressure, and that allowed the spokes to actually flex their strengths at vibration absorption. These historically have been only used on mountain bikes where they have incredibly rough conditions, and so that kind of checks out that that's where these would shine on the road too. But that's just testing. Let's see how they do in the real world and on a 400K brevet. We're going to be testing these Goosyn wheels, see if the strings hold up, see how they perform with lots and lots of climbing and descending today. The 400K is in the books and it was quite a success. If you're curious about how to ride a 400K like it's a regular day, check out my video over here. But you're probably more curious about how these wheels performed, and I'd like to take a minute to talk about their comfort performance first. That's one of the main advertising points and points of advantage for these spokes since they're a little bit more elastic than competing materials. On my 400K, I was unable to notice any significant difference in comfort compared to my Far Sports wheels with CX-Ray spokes. I think that comes down to the setup that I use for randonneuring. On that, I have a suspension stem, suspension seat post, and I set my tires between 50 and 55 psi. I've tested each of these variables before for their impact on vibration absorption. And each of these variables separately has a much greater effect of improvement compared to what I found with the change in spoke material on these wheels. And so any effect that these may have had basically gets drowned out by other comfort components that I've made the choice to use. I will say though that I did notice a difference in feeling. The best way I could describe it is that these Goosyn wheels, their frequency or their, resonance of vibration feels different than my CX-ray wheels. And it feels nicer. It doesn't show up in any data. I don't know how I would describe that in an absolute or scientific sense, but it just felt a little bit smoother, where the CX-ray wheels, they resonated in a bit more of a metallic way. It's hard to put into words, but it is a different feeling. It didn't result in any extra comfort, but more of like a placebo effect of comfort. Next, we could expect the elasticity of the spokes to have several different impacts on the ride feel. Things like lateral stiffness, effects on braking, effects on efficient power transfer, and when hard cornering. But I found in the 400K that none of these potentially negative impacts actually came true or were able to be felt. I experienced less rotor rub compared to what I'm used to with my Far Sports CX-Ray wheels. I can't explain why, but there was just a little bit less rotor rub. Descending, also, I actually felt a little more comfortable than usual. I don't think that has anything to do with the elasticity of the spokes, but rather the crosswind stability that I noticed during vibration testing, it carried over really well into the 400K. On top of that, the better crosswind stability helped me stay in the aero bars more often during crosswinds, during especially mid-afternoon in day one. So there may have been a small performance gain there, just from extra confidence. And lastly, power transfer. For a Randonneur, most of our riding is done at a constant cadence, constant pressure on the pedals, and typically lower powers. So the elasticity in the spokes is less likely to have a significant or noticeable impact compared to someone who's doing something like sprinting or climbing hard out of the saddle. As a 90-kilogram rider and putting down some significant power anytime the hills pitch up a bit steep, I was unable to notice any significant loss in power. And in fact, maybe due to the elasticity in the spokes, or maybe due to their light weight, it did feel like the wheels had a bit of extra snap or springiness when I was using them to climb. I don't think this would have any effect on overall climbing speed, but again, it's one of those feeling things that I liked, but it's really hard to quantify in any sort of scientific manner. One other experience from the 400K might explain why there's no cassette, no rotor, and no tire on this wheel. That's because I broke it. It turns out there was a slow leak due to the tire absorbing some sealant, and the tire pressure went down from 55 psi down to like 25 or 30. And around kilometer 399, coming into town, the road was really rough. I went to bunny hop a giant pothole, but with fatigue in the legs, I didn't quite make it, and the wheel just slammed into the corner of the pothole. The rim never stood a chance, but it was able to limp to the finish line without the need for walking. But yeah, the rim hook is completely compromised now, and I'm unable to safely ride this. But a new rim is out on the way, and with the rebuild, should be able to test the serviceability of these pretty standard components, which is important because accidents like this can happen at any time. After what I would call a good time for a first impression with these wheels, I think there's a few conclusions to take away. First, they're a high strength but also high elasticity spoke, and I think that speaks to what its target use case is. This type of technology first excelled in mountain biking, and that's an area where the tires are very easily overwhelmed with the roughness of the environment. And so I expect these will also translate quite nicely to the gravel context. There are, of course, gravel versions of this wheel available over on Panda Podium. That's not really my area of expertise, so I can't really comment on that myself. From more of a road domain perspective, I think these are very much a vibe wheel. These aren't really for someone whose head is deep in an Excel spreadsheet or who's heavily focused on the Tour magazine aero frame test results. Instead, I see this wheel as a perfect complement for the rider who probably got a giant TCR, or a specialized ethos. These are people who ride sporty type riding, and they do it for fun, they do it for the feeling and for the enjoyment. And they're willing to spend some money to get just that right, perfect feeling on their bike. In a rand-enduring use case though, we need absolute insulation from vibration. Subjective feelings are important, but that absolute insulation is more important for reducing fatigue. And just changing spoke material has a limited ability to impact that type of comfort. Compare that to systems like suspension stems and seat posts, which offer 15, 20 millimeters of travel, and a change in vibration qualities from the change in spoke material obviously is going to be much more limited. Kudos to Goosyn for developing these spokes that work alongside really standard hubs. I think that's going to make this type of technology accessible to more people and more comfortable to maintain over the long run than proprietary options. I think this wheel set is a pretty premium set of options here with ceramic bearings, ultra lightweight hub, and premium rim set. So I'm looking forward to when this product line expands to offer some more cost-conscious options, maybe at a little bit heavier weight, but also when it offers higher spoke counts. For heavy people like me, even though I had no problems with the spoke's strengths, 20 spokes just feels too small. If you think these wheels might be suitable for you, head on over to Panda Podium to check them out. They currently have 3 offerings: a climbing wheel, this mid-depth all-around road wheel, and an ultra-wide gravel wheel too. For me, I think these are going to have a permanent place on my Polygon as it transforms into more of a climbing and sort of vibes bike. But make sure you subscribe to the channel and don't miss out on what's coming up, because my more spreadsheet-focused aero bike build is coming up real soon, and you don't want to miss that. Ride safe, everyone. See you in the next video.